2, 1. Good evening to all our viewers. This is a monthly webinar series hosted by Association for Harm Reduction, Education and Research. Today we have with us esteemed panelists, Dr. Badri, Narayanan, Gopalakrishnan from Seattle, USA, and Ms. Usha Rengaraju, the topmost data scientist from Bangalore, India. And we welcome you all for today's edition, which is taking a deep dive into the Global Youth Tobacco Survey 4th version, India's results, which are recently released by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Indian Minister. And we are going to look into it a little bit tangentially, because we have an economist giving us a rare insight how this data findings are going to help us understand the tobacco use trends among youth in India, and also very unique perspectives from Ms. Usha Rengaraju, who will help us understand the big data and like a data analytical perspective. Before that, I would like to allow our esteemed speakers to introduce themselves, because I may not be doing enough justice to the profile of work they have been doing, especially in the field of tobacco, but otherwise they have been doing phenomenal work in their own core domains. So I would like to invite Dr. Badri Narayanan to help us understand what is his background as an economist and what is his connection to tobacco and its related work that has been done by him. Dr. Badri.
Thank you, Dr. Sree. So I'm Badri Narayanan, and I'm based in Seattle. I'm an economist. So I work on different various policy related issues that cut across different domains in terms of like international trade, agricultural aspects, industrial aspects, healthcare, and energy, environment, sustainable development, and so on. So my main focus is economic research, analysis, and modeling, and looking at various policy issues and help the decision makers to understand what are the pros and cons of various policies. I run this company named Infinite Sum Modeling. We established it in 2015. And before that, I was an academic. I was teaching and doing research at Purdue University here. And so we work with many international organizations like United Nations, World Bank, IMF, and also many governments across the world, and also private sector, like companies like McKinsey, KPMG, Google, and so on. So our focus has been to use data science, economic research, modeling for decision making. In the area of tobacco, I worked on many different topics for the World Health Organization, and also for some institutions like Woodrow Wilson Institute here. So I have looked at the topic of controlling tobacco. So if you want to control the tobacco consumption, what are the different policies one can adopt, and how does it affect the supply side and demand side? How does it affect the farmers, the cigarette companies, the tobacco companies, and how would that affect the workers, the employment? And how can you make sure that the damage to the economy is minimal while adopting the tobacco control policies? And how do you rehabilitate the people who are losing jobs because of tobacco control? So that has been one of my areas of work. And the other area of work is on subsidies going into the tobacco sector. So if you subsidize the tobacco sector extensively, how will that affect that will reduce the prices of tobacco and hence enhance the consumption? And also the trade policies. If you have free trade in tobacco, that means you're going to get tobacco at a lower prices across the world, and that can again enhance the consumption. So looking at all these supply side policies, particularly, how can we affect the supply of tobacco and hence lead to its reduced consumption without affecting with minimizing the collateral damage on the economy. So that has been one of my areas of work, and I'm also quite interested in the main topic of the discussion today, which is tobacco harm reduction, because one topic is to think about the supply side and reduce the supply of tobacco, and that is important to do eventually. But the other thing is also how to understand the behavior of people who smoke, who are into tobacco, and how to help them come out of it in a step-by-step way, in this kind of harm reduction kind of way. And that is also some of my ongoing interest, and we are also planning to collaborate in the future. So thank you again, and look forward to discussing more.
Thank you, Dr. Badri. That was a very interesting introduction about your work, and definitely we will dig deeper into the course of the panel discussion. Now I would like to invite Ms. Usha Rengaraju to allow us understand what her background of work is as a data scientist, as one of the top data scientists nominated in India. And also because we invited her to look into the global youth tobacco survey data, how she looks at this tobacco epidemic in India. Madam?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Madam, we are not able to hear you. Can you be a little bit closer to the audio?
Yeah. Hello. Am I audible now?
No, madam. Yeah. A little bit louder.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
A little bit better, but it could be much more better.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Can I join from my phone?
Yeah, you can join from your phone.
Yeah, I would let you talk for 2 minutes while I join from my phone.
Yeah, fine, madam. So madam will join us later. So meanwhile, I'll continue the discussion with Dr. Badri. So Dr. Badri, today's panel discussion topic is titled like Deep Dive into the Global Youth Tobacco Survey 4 findings. And recently, this particular data has been in the news because the Global Youth Tobacco Survey Indian version finds that there has been a tremendous decline in the past decade, especially in the youth tobacco use. If you have looked into the data, what are your expert insights, how this data speaks to you?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. So I had a look at the survey results, and some of the results are really interesting and kind of surprising. We did not expect certain things, and some of the things are like along the lines of expectations. Maybe I can start with some of the good positive news or observations. So before getting into my first point, in general, the discussions among the policymakers in tobacco sector, in the healthcare sector in general, is more dynamic and forward-looking. It's more about the future. So today things can be bad, or we can have a lot of people smoking and getting addicted and so on. But we are more interested in the next generation, how the next generation is going to be, how are the children today compared to the children yesterday. And for example, if you take Singapore, they have some ambitious policies wherein they have a very strict ban or elimination of smoking and tobacco related activities for the next generation. So basically they want a new fresh generation coming out which hasn't even heard of tobacco, which has no access to tobacco. The current generation, okay, they have some controls, but they don't give them that much importance. But they say the next generation should have no access to it. And that way, you can get a whole new generation which doesn't even think about tobacco. So in that angle, I think the good news for India is that, first of all, this particular survey has come after a very long break, actually, long gap for, I don't know, there could be some reasons, but it has come after a long time. And although there are disadvantages to have such a long break, one advantage or one kind of interesting thing that we can see is, like, we can see how much we have changed in the last 10 years. So this has come after 10 years almost. So after 2009, we have this 2019 data. And the very first observation is that if you look at the early teenage group, 13 to 15 years aged school-going children, in this last 10 years, this decade, the decline is 42%. 42% tobacco use decline has happened. This is extremely significant because obviously this age group, the population would have increased for sure in the last 10 years. Because the population is growing overall, and these are young kids, so they are going to be, there are going to be many more children in this age group in 2019 compared to 2009. So based on the survey, they say 42% has fallen. Even if you say something like, like, let's say that there is around 20%, 20-25% increase in the population, given a 2% per year growth in population. This means that there are 20-25% more kids now, children in this age group now, and despite that, the reduction in the number of kids who smoke or tobacco use has declined by 42%. That is quite a statement, because even if the population had stayed the same, and if you see this 42% decline in tobacco use, it's quite a big achievement. But the population has actually increased by a quarter, like 25% or so. And in that new increased population, the tobacco use has declined by 42%. That means it's a huge decrease in what we call as prevalence. The number of kids per million or per thousand who smoke must have gone down even steeper. So that I want to start our discussion in a very positive note. That's a great achievement for the policymakers, for the people at large. For me, I think most importantly, the parents, the teachers, so they've all done a good job to induce the children not to smoke or not to get into this. It's particularly more difficult in this generation because there is a lot of different ways to get misled and a lot of different ways to go astray compared to previous generation, but still the kids are under control. So a lot of credit goes to the parents, also the policymakers, because there has been a lot of awareness programs, which for example, whenever you watch a movie, the first thing you see is a warning about this. And so there is so much awareness now, and a whole generation, last 2-3 generations grew up with a feeling that tobacco is not a bad thing and it's a stylish thing, and so on, mainly from the entertainment industry. And now the last generation, I think the entertainment industry also has played a role, and that is because of regulations. There have been regulations to say that whenever you see anyone smoking, you have this warning, and you have this labeling for the packages, which are very scary. Even before somebody buys a cigarette, if they see the package, they get really scared. There are many such policies, regulations, and awareness among common people that has led to this. So I would basically highlight this very, very positive aspect. And at the same time, we should also not get too much enthusiastic here, which I was as soon as I saw this. The reason for lack of enthusiasm is that at the end of the day, this is a survey, and maybe Usha may talk more about the data aspects here. But I can say that if you look at the sample, it is just a few thousand students. There are like 97,000 students. And this particular group, 13 to 15 years age group, is around 81,000 students. So obviously, although we can say that statistically speaking, it's a great, perfect sample, and they have done random sampling and all kinds of things. At the end of the day, it's a sample, and there could be, if you really go to the entire population, we may not be sure that this is exactly what happened. So I think that is one aspect of kind of caution. But broadly speaking, it's a good outcome. Even if the error is like 20-30% error, still it's a big accomplishment. And the second, and most of the other observations, I would say they are pretty similar to what you would expect. For example, greater consumption among the boys than girls, and a lot of the students, they are exposed to secondhand smoke, 29%. Again, the 29%, I don't know what was the number last time in the previous survey, but 29% in my eyes, again, is not very high, probably because the overall smoking has come down. And this is something probably people who have lived for 20-30 years in India now, they would realize, like, it was so common to get a passive smoke when you walk around in the streets. So this ban of smoking publicly and so on, that has been quite effective. So the number is only 29%. Probably it would have been, just anecdotally, based on my personal experience walking around in the streets in India, I would say, as a person myself, if I go out and walk around, I would have had almost 100% probability of getting exposed to passive smoking when I was a child in India. But now it is 29%, which is also a great thing. But of course, there are other things in the survey which basically say that things, there is a proverb, like, the more the things change, the more they remain the same. So there are certain things that haven't changed much, like you can see that 69% of the smokers of cigarette and 78% of BD smokers, they all get the cigarettes, BDs very easily. The access is very easy, like a store or pawn shop or vending machines, street vendors. So the access has actually probably might have improved, because previously you have to go to a shop. Now you have many other technological advancements to buy. And also the other thing is the age consideration is again not a big deal. So like 45%, 47% of cigarette and BD smokers respectively, they were actually not refused because of their age, which means that the age-related enforcements have not been taken into account. They're not been followed extensively. So I think, and the awareness has increased, like among the schools, like 85% of school heads, they're aware of the policies like COTPA, and about this tobacco-free school kind of policy. So there is a lot of awareness among the schools, and that I think is a pretty formidable achievement, and that is probably one of the reasons why this is happening. But having looked at all these things, I feel like it all makes some economic sense. The economists have been divided on how to kind of control tobacco. Do we increase the prices, increase the taxes, make it difficult to access, or just increase the reduce the availability, or create the awareness among people, make them think twice before smoking. So there are all these different possibilities to reduce smoking. And it appears to me that big story coming from this survey is that awareness creation is probably going to go a long way among both the potential smokers, actual smokers, and also their surroundings, like the schools, people like parents and so on. So I think that is one takeaway. But there's still a lot of challenges, like access is very easy still, and you also have the second-hand smoke is also not that insignificant. That is also still there, and also one other thing is that at the point of sale, at the point where tobacco is sold, there the awareness, the advertisements and promotions are not being noticed by many students. Only 18% of students have seen that. So there are a lot of things that are with the government's control that can be improved. And of course, there is no discussion or no mention even about harm reduction. And I think that is one major aspect that we'll talk more in this thing. That's one of the focus of this webinar. So thank you. I'll talk more about that in the due course.
Yeah, you almost covered very comprehensively what is the Global Youth Tobacco Survey 4 version findings for India. I see Usha madam waiting there. Madam, can you join us now? Usha madam, I hope your audio is supporting you right now.
Hello?
Yeah, I hope she will be able to join us. So,
am I audible? Hello?
Yes, madam, you're audible.
Yeah. So let me know if my voice goes down or if you want me to speak a little louder. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit louder.
Yeah. Hello? Now is it okay?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So I'm Usha, and I'm a data science consultant by profession, and I'm also a consultant at Infinite Sum Modeling, and I'm also an adjunct faculty for the online Masters in Data Science program at IIT Madras, and a visiting faculty at Symbiosis Pune. And during my data science career, I've worked across multiple domains, including genomics, psychology, neuroscience, heavy manufacturing, semiconductors, retail, telecom. There are a lot of domains where I've worked with enormous amount of data. I've worked a lot in the healthcare domain, and but I've not specifically worked on tobacco usage. So this was a great opportunity for me to go through the data specific to tobacco and the policies and a lot of things related to the tobacco usage and the prevention. And I had interesting time going through the GYTS survey, and there are few things which I found it very shocking was Karnataka and Goa. Cities like Karnataka and Goa has the lowest usage in tobacco, and this was quite shocking to me because I had always thought Karnataka, Goa, and Puducherry, these are districts which are like more of pub scene. Especially I stay in Bangalore, so the pub scene and the also has a correlation with smoking. So I always thought these are the major cities where there is high dominance of tobacco and all the smoke related products. And but the survey shows they have the lowest consumption in these states and the highest consumption in Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, and all these states. But there is one point which I'd like to point out is if you see the socio-economic areas, these are like the GDP and the other poverty and all these factors, they are like high in these areas. They have a strong correlation with the Mizoram and all these states. So maybe there could be a conclusion that the socio-economic conditions should can have a strong correlation. From the survey, you can make out the socio-economic condition may have a strong correlation with youth, whether the with the prevalence of youth using tobacco or not. And outside that, I was also shocked too because I've never accessed the tobacco survey data before. So it was very shocking for me when I got to know that 10-year-old kids can, start using tobacco. It's a very, very shocking information for me. And I can't imagine, 10-year-olds, the average median age for the usage of tobacco is 10 years and 11.5 years. And this was again very, very shocking for me. And the third point which I noticed was there is only 2% and the 2 out of 10 people who have tried, in the last 12 months to, quit tobacco. So if you see not just tobacco usage, in the psychological perspective, quitting from anything is a very, very difficult thing. Early prevention is always better. Once a person has started using, and if there are already addiction, if they've crossed that addiction stage, it's always very, very difficult to quit. So it's always easy to prevent before becoming an addict. You can easily prevent a child from making them quit, but once they've become an addict, it's very, very difficult. And this survey is also very, very important in perspective that nicotine addiction, in adults it is very, very difficult to prevent. Once people have become an addict, that point of in an adults it is very, very difficult to put them in reformation centers to do all this prevention. It's very, very difficult. But in youth, if you can identify the candidates who are likely to become addict, at this age, at the young age, it's very easier for reformation. So that way this survey plays a huge role. And this, because of consuming tobacco and becoming an addict at an early stage, there's also probability of the person having a shorter lifespan also. And if a country has a lot of youths who are addicted to tobacco and a lot of them are going to have a shorter lifespan, then that's not going to prove that's going to become very bad sign for the country future as well. So this is a very, very important cause. And this survey is very, very has exposed many shocking details for a first time reader like me. I was totally shocked when I got to know like 10-year-old kids can start smoking and all this thing. And these are my insights from the survey.
Okay, thank you so much for giving us that unique perspectives as the first time learner or looking at the data from that perspective. I would just like to draw the panelists' attention to think and share your thoughts about, because Dr. Badri also expressed this kind of dismay about in a country with this much burden of tobacco, when you survey 97,000 people or 97,000 target subjects and draw data conclusions, how can we extrapolate it? And are there any other complementary measures we can also add to this population-based survey so that we can feel like this data is authenticated or can be validated with additional measures? Because population-based, survey-based, questionnaire-based data is sometimes, because someone was using the term shocking and someone was using the term surprising kind of thing. So my direct question to the panelists is, population surveys and other measures, what are they? Dr. Badri?
Yeah, I can start this, and maybe I think Usha will have some good perspectives on this. So I think in many cases, the surveys are still happening in many areas, and whatever reservations we may have on this particular survey, they also exist for any other data that the government releases. If you take the Indian government, we have this national sample surveys, we have NSS surveys, we have consumption, employment, a wide range of things. And a lot of policy research happens using all these data sets. And in a country of 1.2, 1.3 billion people, most of the surveys are going to barely cover, few thousand households, few thousand people. So this criticism exists for every single survey, every single government data that we have. So to be fair, we should say that this is not a problem that is specific to tobacco, but for all the data sets that we have. And again, to be fair, it is not a problem unique to India. Many large countries have the same issue, because I know, for example, I can talk about a country like Sweden, which is quite small in size. And once I was working with some researchers there, and I got a data in an Excel file to my email, and I opened it. It was a bunch of it was a company level data on emissions, and how emissions happen by each company. And I was amazed. I said, okay, this is great. This is a good sample. They said, this is not sample, this is population. They have the entire data of all the companies, every single company in the country, and they have data on all the characteristics of them, financial and otherwise, and they have details on emissions. What kind of emissions, where do they come from? So that was amazing. And that is possible if you're like we always say that, yeah, we are too large to do anything comprehensive. But then this gives you an example as to how detailed you can go if you're small. But maybe even if you take in India, you can have cities that are that small, and even at city level, we don't have any such information. So it's not only about size; it's also about the thought process, that needs to go in. So I think that is where we're lagging there, and that is where I think maybe Usha can add some thoughts here. Basically, there are various modern methods of data harvesting, and Usha and I have been discussing about this in the context of poverty. We did a panel discussion a few years ago where there are so many ways to infer data from whatever is available already, like satellite images. Usha developed a way to understand poverty from satellite images. So there are various ways to do that. In the same way here also, there could be ways. There could be app-based collection of data, and all these surveys are. And another probably kind of a shocking thing that I can share with the group here is even in economic data. I worked a lot on economic data, industrial surveys, and some of my friends in the industry, I just asked them out of curiosity, have you ever been approached by these statistical agencies? So one of my friends who runs a relatively large company, a textile mill, he was telling me that, oh, once I just got a call from somebody, and they just asked a couple of questions, and I showed him the data. This is the data that they collect. Did they ask you all these questions? And he said, no, they just asked me how many people are employed and what is the turnover. And I also didn't tell them the right figure, because I was, they all have this tax issue, so they don't tell the truth exactly. So that I was actually quite amazed, because I know this friend, and he's actually like a very he's not like a typical industrial guy. He's a very open guy and shares information, because I myself got a lot of information from him for my research. So such a person was not even interrogated properly for surveys. So then you can imagine how much information can be collected there. There are so many problems here. First thing is, we talked about the sample. Second thing is, even in that sample, how much reliable is the data collection methodology? So there itself, there is a lot of problems. So that is where I think some of the modern methods, like app-based method, or some kind of inferences based on based on their activities or purchase history. Now, a lot of purchases have become digital, online. So you just look at how much tobacco is purchased at the points of sale, and who is purchasing, get some history there. And there are a lot of such ways. There could be more compliance things that can come, compliance mechanisms that can be imposed on the shopkeepers who sells tobacco, and to collect information on who is buying, how are they buying, and so on. And that can even happen at a population level. If not population level, at least a much larger sample. And there is no need to conduct a proper survey. It can be like part of the process. It can be even, this data can be released every year or every few months, every quarterly or half-yearly, and we can monitor it very closely. So I feel like basically, in short, what I would say is that, the sample has to increase, and more importantly, the collection method has to change. We should not, and this new method can actually be cheaper than the older method, where you employ surveyors who are, who have to go and many times they make mistakes. They may just make up some data. So we can just avoid all these things and make it, more digital and at the points of sale kind of basis. So that's my broad, idea on this, and maybe Usha can add more on how like think about more details on how this can be done. She may have examples where like what I mentioned about this satellite imaging kind of approach, where we did some work on poverty identification. So I think some big data method or data analytics method would be really helpful.
That is exactly what I was looking for when I asked this question, because apart from the methodological issues you have raised, Dr. Badri, when I generally ask my own research subjects and field participants about their tobacco history, most of the times they underreport their tobacco usage. Either they use tobacco and they say like they have reduced the tobacco intake, or they have quit the tobacco intake in the survey. But when we do any biological markers of exposure, like biomarkers of exposure for tobacco consumption, like a urinary biomarker or a salivary biomarker or a blood biomarker, it reveals a different story. In my earlier research, I have done a cotinine biomarker test. And when I compared it with the oral history of tobacco consumption and the biological marker, it is like 40% variation to the oral submission that either they are a tobacco user or non-tobacco user. So taking your story forward, I would like to invite Ms. Usha Rengaraju. Madam, do you have any new information to add to what Dr. Badri said? How can these population surveys be complemented with the latest technology to actually understand what is the consumer use patterns of tobacco, so that we can totally understand what is the tobacco burden and also plan adequate health programs to address that?
Yeah, so there are a lot of wearable devices which are coming into the market. There was a product which I was reading about, it has a computer vision based product which will actually monitor, the hand movements and if the person is smoking or not. So these are like advanced deep learning for computer vision, using these technologies, these products are developed. So, when you say surveys, you go there, give them a questionnaire for a short period of time, maybe an hour or so, and then get it and come. But when you collect data through wearables or these advanced devices which track the hand movements and all that, so you might have to give them some form of a wearable, and you will have to monitor them over a period of time, like 30 days or 60 days. So, that wearable will give you a data for 30 days and 60 days, which will be more accurate. And so this data collection, will be a lot, several times much more accurate than a simple survey. Because, you get every day, you are just not, collecting the data on some random day. You are, observing the patient for over a period of 60 days or, for over a period of time, that gives you some more standard observations compared to, just observing them on one random day. Even when we collect some kind of a body fluids or the saliva for identifying the biomarkers, we will be like able to collect it over a period of time. So saliva, I think, is the easiest biomarker for us to get. So you can observe the saliva of a patient over a period of time. You can give them some form of variable which will automatically, if the person spits on that, and automatically it will be able to give you statistics about the biomarkers. So all of these devices, are available in market in several forms. Like, there are several variables already out there. The computer vision products are, still released but not commercialized. So there are several of these products out there. And in addition to the survey, I think these products can help us get much more accurate insights. I think population surveys are a lot more biased, and because people may not be willing to tell the truth, and even if it is anonymized, the probability of a person telling the truth is may not be likely. And coming deciding decision policies based on a biased data may not be good for the country and for the future as well. So it's very, very important that we observe the candidates over a period of time and also use biomarkers, as you said, get the much more accurate report. And also that, you may have to choose a sample which is representative of the population, from across all socio-economic backgrounds. So choosing the right population sample is also very, very important. So when you do surveys on schools, like have you picked up schools from various socio-economic backgrounds as well? And when you are taking a state, and definitely the survey is not collected in every city in the state. So you are randomly sampling few cities. So have you sampled, the cities across multiple socio-economic backgrounds? Some of the cities may be like very rich. Some of the cities may have a lot of poverty in them. So have you picked up the right kind of cities for? So there are a lot of other, other attention has to be put, how you sample. So that is going to be very important. So even when you use these devices and all that, so if your data is not sampled properly, that can cause a lot of errors. So that is one thing. And the second thing is there are a lot of things like data collection mechanisms like Google outsource and crowdsource and all that. So there are a lot of these kind of data collection mechanisms will remove the burden or the barrier from the policymakers to sit and design surveys and collect the. You can outsource this data collection mechanisms as well. So there are a lot of Google crowdsource is one of it, but there are several other crowdsourcing your data collection process. There are several other websites available as well. So these are some of the other ways where you can collect the data, and there should be some incentive for telling the truth. So there's a high probability that the patient is going to lie. So in order for them to say the truth, there should be some incentive. So the experiment has to be designed carefully as well. And so these are some of the insights which I think is related to this topic.
Yeah, I totally agree with your input that all these novel emerging technologies can be embedded into these kind of population-based surveys to realistically capture the tobacco use among youth especially, and that may reflect more realistically what is the real trend. Now, let me come back and ask about, because India is such a diverse country, a country within a country kind of description fits more appropriately when it comes to India. Dr. Badri, we all know that we both come, all three of us come from South India, being in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. We do know that the tobacco consumption patterns are very unique to different parts of the country, especially among youth also. So looking at the global youth tobacco survey findings, what could be the challenges when we think of addressing youth and tobacco issues across India, whether we have to think of a more strategic plans suitable to, because I remember Usha madam also raised this. Northeast is having a very unique set of problems to be addressed when it comes to tobacco. So as a panelist, what could be your thoughts? Like, what are the challenges to address Northeast tobacco epidemic, and what could be the solution?
Thank you, Dr. Sree. So I think not only in the context of tobacco, but in most of the economic and other public policies, it's important to consider like specific states and even districts, because India is such a heterogeneous country, like you rightly pointed out. It's actually in some ways, in many ways, it is more diverse than many countries actually. Like if you take European Union, there is more homogeneity or uniformity among countries in European Union compared to the kind of uniformity you may say in India among states. Even neighboring states can be very different. So this the last figure that they show in the survey, stacking all the states, that is highly illustrative. First thing is that the average, the national average is like 8.5 is a number for national average, and so many states are below that. But the very few states that are above that, they are much above that. Like you rightly said, the Northeast, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, these are like high, so high, like 57, 58, 42, 33, and so on. So at least that that is coming pretty strongly from the analysis. Despite all the data problems that we talked about, this is one thing that is coming out very clearly. The only northeastern state that is lower than the national average is like Tripura, and that is also not far away from the national average. So it's only like 7.6, where the national average is 8.5. So I think what this says is that every state should have its own strategy, and the states that have low, like Himachal Pradesh or like Usha pointed out, Karnataka is among the lowest at 1.2. But there is no reason for, I mean, this is not a reason for them to sit back and relax, because I mean, like there could be some data issues here, or there could also be, the number appears small, but there is a lot more potential. You can decrease it even further. So I think this cross-state comparisons should not give particularly the apparently better performing states kind of overconfidence that, okay, we are doing well, we don't have to focus more on this. So I think that is very dangerous, both like in the context of the data errors, the data mistakes that we discussed earlier, because that can give them a false sense of confidence, which is very dangerous. And secondly, they should also, even if that is true, I mean, we should compare this with better countries that have performed much better, like Singapore or some of the Western countries and so on. So I think that should be the way to think about. There should be more objective benchmarks, which are coming from the health community, like people like Dr. Sree. They are the ones who should say like what is the permissible level, and that should be the target rather than how each of us is performing. So each state should objectively follow a particular target and go towards that. And when it comes to Northeast, I think the reason could be two different reasons. Again, like what we discussed so far. First could be that since these states are relatively small, maybe the administration and the data collection is probably much better. So maybe the data quality is much better, and this is always a problem. Like when I've seen this kind of issue in other industries and contexts where somebody who is very transparent, somebody who is really good at collecting data, they may look like a bad guy because they're really transparent about them. They're getting good quality data, and they're showing that they're not doing so well. But somebody else who is either not collecting data so well or probably hiding facts, they will look better. They look like they are doing well. So this is in the context of an industry I'm talking about, where industries, companies that shield some of their bad things, they are going to be more popular than the companies that are very transparent and they share some of their shortcomings. So I think this is something similar to that, probably, because I'm not an expert. I haven't explored at a state level. I haven't worked. I typically work at a country level broadly, particularly on tobacco. So I'm not completely aware of what is happening in those states, but one reason could be that the scale of data collection is much smaller there. So probably the quality is better, and hence you see these alarming numbers. But the second reason could also be maybe there is a kind of like a problem there, real problem there. People do smoke a lot there for various reasons. It could be some kind of traditional reasons. They have been doing it for a while, generations. It's passing from one generation to the other. People are not helping their kids or guiding their kids in the right direction, probably, and probably even maybe it also may have to do with some misconceptions. Maybe some of the states are it could be because of weather and so on. Like they may think that smoking can comfort you in a weather that is either cool or a lot of rain. So if you smoke, it gives you warmth to your body or something. They may have some misconceptions like that. So I think it's a combination of all these things: the practices, the local practices, the traditional aspects, and so on. So I don't have any specific thoughts here on why this is so in the northeastern states, but I'm just putting forward these couple of broad, I would say, suspicions, like on data quality and on behavior of the people there.
Thank you so much. It is really insightful to look at it from that perspective, like how a small state might have a good quality of data collection because of its inherent dynamics. And now I would like to ask Usha Rengaraju, because this point was highlighted by you. Being a native of Karnataka state, your personal experience was different from the data which was projected in the findings, right? And also report says like the initiation of tobacco starts as early as before the 10th birthday, according to the findings. So going forward, to sustain that 42% decline of tobacco use in that 13 to 15 year age group, and also to actually not make the youngsters take up tobacco as early as 10th birthday, what could be the future strategies as a public policy? Because raising awareness, maintaining the awareness, these are all good, but are there unique solutions to this, Ms. Usha?
Yeah, hi. So from the data science perspective, there's a lot we can make use of the literature studies which are out there. So if you take the literature studies, there are enormous amount of literature studies. So it's definitely impossible for the policymakers to sit and go through the millions of documents, because we have several countries, and several countries would have conducted several surveys, and after conducting surveys, they would have initiated some policies, and the effect, they would have measured the effect of those policies as well. And there are a lot of researchers from the universities, PhD students writing research papers on these areas. There are several papers and millions of documents which are coming out on this topic. So we can make use of this enormous amount of data out there to get these solutions. So, for example, there was a data set which was released by Allen's Institute of Science and Kaggle. It's called the COVID data set. It's a huge repository of COVID related documents. And so Kaggle hosted this competition last year around May, where they had several questions, and they wanted the candidates to use data science techniques to answer several questions out of this literature. So there were a lot of more than 1,700 to 2,000, people have participated in it, and they've published notebooks, and they've answered several of the questions asked by Kaggle. So this can be similarly applied to tobacco research as well. We can do, we can collect. It is very easy to get, mine the data from the World Wide Web and Google and all these things. Once we collect this data, and we can easily ask, there might be a lot of burning questions, with regards to the policy formations. If you want to make an effective policy, you might have prerequisite questions and you want answers to these questions. And there could be, for example, if you take Mizoram or Arunachal Pradesh, the socioeconomic conditions of these states could be similar to a different socioeconomic condition in a different country in the world as well, and they would have given out some results and things. And conducting the surveys over and over again, before finding out whether a similar experiments or similar research has been conducted by another candidate, if we are going to invest a lot of amount of time and money into it, that's a huge waste of all these resources. Instead, if we can mine the answers to these questions from this big data which is available, then they can save a lot of amount of all the valuable resources for all of these countries. And it can come up, we might be shocked to find unique insights coming out of the big data which we have never even thought of. And so using NLP, natural language processing, with right now the GPT-3, GPT-2 and all, that we are in much more cutting edge advanced stage of NLP research. So using natural language processing techniques, we can find a lot of insights which might be valuable to the government and the other research organization from this huge amount of big data which we have mined from the World Wide Web. And outside that, there should be an infusion of psychology and neuroscience into whatever policies we make, because there is a huge amount of psychology component in addressing the trigger. So when you you make a policy, and how does a kid, when he gets a trigger, what how can the kid control the trigger to smoke? So there's a lot of psychology component as well. So when you make a policies, we should also look into the psychological and the neuroscience factors of it, and analyze it from when you so when you want to stop a kid from smoking, and how can you do it effectively, we should need to understand the psychology of the kid as well, and come up with some measures which will be more effective for it. And the measures for kids and adults may differ, because for kids it's in the early stage. So the nicotine addiction and preventing nicotine addiction at the early stage, when they are 11 to 20, is much more easy than doing it at the 30. So when you want to stop a person who's a 30-year-old from smoking, then that's going to be a lot of amount of time investing, preventing, and a lot of resources you need to invest. But preventing someone from 11 to 20 years is very easy. So we need to focus on this age group is very, very important. And intersection of various domains might bring about an effective economic policies for this context. And definitely big data and natural language processing, computer vision, deep learning, on all these technologies can play a huge role in deciding, in making effective policies for the future. And these are my thought process around this topic.
That's a wonderful summarization of today's panel discussion. We did cover very interesting areas in understanding what Global Youth Tobacco Survey 4th version reveals for Indian youth and their tobacco consumption practices. We are thankful to both the panelists, Dr. Badri and Ms. Usha Rengaraju, for sharing their valuable time, expertise, and understanding, as well as what is their inputs and insights towards understanding this data and in which direction we can look, because both of them come from such a different fields, and helping us understand this particular data from that particular lens. It was really insightful. Thank you so much, both of you. I look forward to engage you in much more valuable discussions in future. Thank you once again. This is me signing off from monthly webinar series of Association for Harm Reduction, Education and Research. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you very much,
Dr. Sree and Dr. Badri. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. See you soon. Yeah.
Thank you.